Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of Orange County Board of Supervisors for August 22nd, 2017. We'll begin our meeting with the invocation to be offered by Vice Chair Doe, and today's Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Supervisor Bartlett.
Please bow your head. Dear Lord, we ask you for your blessings as we gather here today. We seek to represent fairly and well those who have given us this honor to serve. May our efforts today be blessed with insight, and we are guided by understanding and wisdom. We seek to serve our community with respect for all, and please give us the strength to act honestly and well in all matters before us. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Good morning. Please place your right hand over your heart and join me in saluting the flag of our great nation. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice Chair Doe and Supervisor Bartlett. Just a couple of reminders for today's meeting. Please use the side entrance to my left when entering and leaving the room. All other doors are alarmed and are for emergency exit only. Please set all phones to mute or vibrate at this time and for the duration of the meeting. A listing of changes to today's agenda along with agendas and requests to speak are located on both sides and at the back of the room. The board will be breaking for lunch around the noon hour, during which time we'll recess to closed session. We'll now move to the public comment section of the agenda. At this time, members of the public may address the Board of Supervisors on any or multiple items on the agenda, excluding public hearings, or on any issue that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. This is the only opportunity for public input except for scheduled public hearing items. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person. When you are called to speak, please step to the podium and we request that you state your name and city of residence for the record. Please note the light on the podium. The green light means you have 3 minutes. The light changes to yellow when you have 1 minute left, and the light turns red when your time is up. We ask that you observe the time limit so that all who wish to speak will have an opportunity to do so. When addressing the board, please address the board as a whole through the chair. Comments to individual supervisors or staff are not permitted. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
Yes, we have 10 speakers.
Oh, good. Okay, let's call first 3 names.
Okay, first 3 names, if you can line up behind the podium: Michael Klubnikin, Paul Hike, and Norris.
Last Wednesday, Ilya Seglin invited me to a public hearing, a community town hall at the Regional Center of Orange County. And you would have thought I was at the Board of Supervisors because they stopped him in the midst of his speech making his issue at the Regional Center. And then afterwards, as usually at these kind of meetings, they had a little Q&A afterwards. He addressed the director again, and his words to Ilya, "See you in court." So I'm here to talk about the court. You hear a lot about the court. You were in the courtroom, Madam Chair, via your staff. You witnessed a judge. Well, actually, he's not a judge. He was a commissioner, because the judge wouldn't appear before me. I'm the moving party. I pay my fees. I make the motion. I file 300 pages to make my argument, the reconsideration. He rules before I say one blanking word. You were there. What did you do with what you knew? That's called prejudicial ruling, misconduct by a judge, making a mockery of the court. In my report today, I'm giving the Attorney General of Complaint 146. I attached his minute order, and it falsely states, well, I gave oral arguments to Mr. Klubnik. No, he didn't. Liar, liar, pants on fire. The judge is a big, fat liar. He didn't hear one oral statement. He ruled before I said one word, and you know about it, so you are complicit. So in this little report, I attached a little note that I had sent to the public defender. I believe that's under your jurisdiction. This was back in 2011, before any trial. And I said, this is what's going on. You better stop this shenanigans of this racketeer influence knucklehead organization. And what did the public defender, what did 5 supervisors do? You guys removed it from the public record. 105 pages. I only put 12 of those 105 to make my point. So from here now, this is what? We have 7 more meetings to my big trial. Oh boy, I'm going to be before a judge again to make my argument of racketeer influence knucklehead organization. But this time the judge might appear. I mean, the last time the judge says priority setting, he doesn't even appear. Then he says, well, Rules 317 we got to adhere to. No, they don't. They didn't file anything. No pretrial, no document, no exhibit, nothing. In the transcript, you could read about it. Well, I'm going to give Klubnik a chance to cross-examine. No, liar, liar, pants on fire. I didn't get to examine nor cross-examine the witness because you're running an illegal blanking business. My biggest proof are judges and supervisors. So from now on, I got 7 more meetings. I'm going to put in writing so a guy with a cable hookup in the rainforest of South America could look up and see what has really been going on with the Klubnikin cases, which is real estate fraud, tax fraud, and you guys, via county council, owe the IRS for selling their property $264,000 with a $30,000 loan. That's a net gain of a lot of money you guys owe the IRS. Somebody's got some splaining to do.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I'm Paul Hike. I live at the Bridget Kramer Place. We still need those chemicals. And we now have a tent for our dining room that needs to be lit, that can be lit under 520-21 of the NEC code, like a carnival or a circus for 90 days. Otherwise, it doesn't get used except during the middle of the day. We need it for early morning and late night. Our last meal's at 7 o'clock when that 7 o'clock shuttle comes in. And I need to talk to somebody about doing some wiring over there. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
After Norris, the next 3 speakers are Wes Jones, Michael Robbins, and Janine Robbins.
This is my name here, Norris Nguyen, and my address in Stanton, California. This is Michelle Park Steele's name here and the address of this building we are in. This is a picture of a rooster and the year 2017. A long time ago in the story of Jesus, there was this high priest who had Jesus sentenced to death. After Jesus was sentenced, he refused to perform miracles to save his own life. However, the very first miracle he performed after he was sentenced was him knowing the exact time and place of a rooster. I repeat, the exact time and place of a rooster. Kamang wivate.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Could you pass that on? Hi, my name is Wes Jones. I live at 417 North Pine Street, Anaheim, California. The list you're supposed to have in front of you is a partial list of diseases caused by exposure to raw sewage. The lack of restroom facilities at the encampment at the Santa Ana riverbed represents a public health risk, not only to the people camping on the riverbed, but to anybody recreationally using the riverbed and to the surrounding neighborhoods. The Board of Supervisors' inaction not only is morally deficient, it poses a substantial risk of litigation. The lack of action on this important matter shows a tremendous disregard to your constituents. I attended a neighborhood meeting in Garden Grove last week where the speaker was a member of the Board of Supervisors. The way he spoke about the county's responsibility towards the homeless was completely lacking in empathy. The supervisor stated that the bathroom located on Catella was sufficient for the entire riverbed. I videotaped the entire meeting, and copies have been given to Muhammad Ali and the ACLU for purpose of use in future legal action. I believe the supervisors have a choice either to provide adequate bathrooms on the riverbed or will be forced to by legal action. The Board of Supervisors has done little or nothing to provide housing for our growing number of homeless.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Supervisor Doe.
Madam Chair, I'm not in the habit of interceding in public comments, but when it reflects a factual inaccuracy involving me, I feel it's necessary for the public to have it in a proper context. My response as to the location in Catella was in response to your misrepresenting to the group at that meeting that there was no bathroom facility at the riverbed. And that's what I responded to. And no, I'm not here to debate with you, sir. This is you're not at the podium, okay?
It didn't have to be convenient, was your exact response, Mr. Doe.
Okay. So we need to put that in the proper context. Okay. Thank you.
Mike Robbins, Housing is a Human Right, OC. And I'd like to talk about some numbers. The number one issue is homelessness. And of course, that ties in with affordable housing. And of course, I'll tie in with Wes's statement, one bathroom for 500 people. We don't want it to be convenient for the homeless people. I believe was a statement. It was on a recorded tape. You know something, we have to have some heart in this matter. And we also have to bring some facilities to them so that we don't have them showing up at the ERs costing us, which is part of the cost of homelessness at $40,000 a year per person, is them showing up at the ERs for infections or other problems. And proper facilities is going to be important to that. But housing them is important too. My numbers were one bathroom for 500 people, $1 billion in discretionary funds. And I know that the drugs have been brought up many times also regarding people that are on the street. And I'd like to remind you, please, that there are 5 million alcohol deaths per year worldwide. The number one killer of everyone. It's on every street corner, in every grocery store. This is the drug that kills everybody. These are the people who run down little old ladies walking through crossing walks, not people who smoke some methamphetamine or are on a bicycle and are homeless. But of course, you know, I brought up the 200 homeless deaths on the street, and it's really important to me. There's people dying on the streets, and we have to solve that problem immediately. That was 200 deaths in 2016. I was looking up the statistics the other day, just thought about it, because they often mention D-Day and how many guys died on the beach there. And there were 2,400 men who died on the beaches at D-Day out of 160,000 people, 160,000 men who stormed the beaches. And that works out to about 2.5%. And the 200 homeless deaths, that's about 8% of the homeless. They would be safer storming the beaches at D-Day than they would be on the streets of Orange County. And that's just a crazy concept to me. And I think we've talked about this for a while. And I think we have an organization put together here, and we have a lot of facts and figures, and we really want to get together with the board now, because I think it's time. It's time. I think we have the figures. I think we have the numbers. We can argue about it. We can go back and forth. We can have one side's rhetoric and the other side's rhetoric, and perhaps we can come to a middle ground, because we have to have a solution, or we're going to be buried in this in the next 10 years. So I hope we can work together with you as soon as possible, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
The next three speakers after Janine Robbins are Elia Seglin, Robert Seglin, and Steve Rocco.
Good morning. Janine Robbins, Anaheim. A recent Orange County Register article states that to live here in Orange County takes 49% of your income. This is the biggest chunk of pay required out of the entire nation. It is also stated that Orange County has the 4th highest rental market in the country. The numbers show us that not one penny of county money goes towards affordable housing or implementation of the 10-year plan to end homelessness. Not one penny. You could end homelessness with the funds in your discretionary account, yet you choose not to. And I don't understand why, and neither does anybody else. You 5 people, well 4, sitting up there are the very reason that people are living in the riverbed and are living in the streets of this county. For those of you who hope to continue your political career, whether it be as DA, as a judge, or simply to sit up there for another 4 years at taxpayer expense, this is your make or break issue. In your recent care coordination newsletter, there were survey results that stated that 76% of residents say homelessness is the problem. 18.7 say the most important issue facing the county is affordable housing, and another 18.7 say homelessness poverty is their most important issue. The final fact is that 61.2% say the county is responsible, and that is you guys. So let me repeat. The numbers show that not one penny of county money goes toward affordable housing or implementation of the 10-year plan to end homelessness. Not one penny, and yet 90,000 people are on the affordable housing list. This is your call. It's your decision to leave people in the streets. Some of you are already claiming to solve homelessness in your campaign literature. Let me tell you, Todd Spitzer, shelters are not solving homelessness. You should also know that simply by looking outside, people know you are not solving homelessness. People are not stupid. Permanent supportive housing is solving homelessness. Housing First has been proven to work time and time again. When people are housed, their mental health improves. When people are housed, their physical health improves. When people are housed, they have a better chance at solving their addictions. When people are housed, they are more likely to become employed. Stability works. It's a proven fact. Now you, Andrew Doe, I attended your meeting last Thursday also. You were choosing to ignore the facts about permanent supportive housing. You were unsupportive of providing housing for the homeless people. In fact, you stated that providing housing would lead them to eventually be drug houses or flop houses, I believe. You need to resign immediately. You really do. If you don't support the county's plan, the 10-year plan to end homelessness, you need to resign because permanent supportive housing is the basis of that plan. For you to quip with a smile on your face, oh, now you want restrooms to be inconvenient, is inexcusable and brought an audible gasp at that event. How dare you say such a statement? Know that that video is being widely shared on social media, and the public will know of your inaction and inhumane actions regarding the unhoused. One more thing.
Your time's up.
I understand. One more statement. Todd Spitzer, Andrew Doe, and Susan Price need to stop spreading fear rhetoric. Stop spreading fear of the homeless and start some action to help them. Stop spreading lies about Proposition 47 and start applying for some of the state funds that are available to prevent homelessness to help these people. I understand our county is far behind the rest of the state.
Next
Thank you.
speaker, please.
Good morning, Honorable Chair Lady Steele and Board of Supervisors. My name is Ilya Tseglin. I am the voice of my innocent, voiceless son Nate, being kidnapped, tortured, and murdering while by the county, while the public defender department with 400 employees, led by Sharon Petrosina, type of public defender Bianchi Hill, protective social services, law enforcement are colluded with mental family probate judges, type as Hubbard, Maberly, Lee, to rubber stamp any ruling favorable for the con artist as CEO of Orange County Regional Center, fascist and neo-Nazi Larry Landauer, director of DDS, Department of Development Services Nancy Bergman, for the sake of personal profiteering from public funding in billions public money reserved for disabled. Also, I can prove I am the voice of your constituencies, the people who feared, do not respect, but fear the public officials more than death, terrorism, natural and man-made disaster. I'm here due to my concern to my family and people public safety. Even though the Judge Gossels, Public Defender Scott Sanders are honorable men, the Court of Justice does not exist and should not be closed, for the corruption, injustice, and distrust of the people who they do not serve and not represent. It is disservice to the public when such mental probate judges, type as Hubbard, Lee, take the court bench lying all the time, and also wants to everybody who tells truth to make and put in institution because they don't want people who wants to be truthful and wants constitution and law be in the court. I'm asking why you, Chair Lady Steele, were not when the supervisors Spitzer and Doe tried to oversight the corruption in the country. Why there were only two?
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, Honorable Board of Supervisors. This is Robert Seglin, brother of Nate Seglin. As I've stated before, my brother Nate Seglin was kidnapped 3 times, once in San Diego, twice in Irvine, Orange County. San Diego, connected to San Diego Regional Center, tried a petition for conservatorship, and in Orange County. And kidnapped from the same 22 Creek Road residence, released by 3 different judges, 3 writs of habeas corpus, but who cares in contempt of the release of the third judicial release. He was placed in the 903 South Harmon Group Home by the Regional Center, violation of the Lanterman Act, a violation of the law and the Constitution, and placed on dangerous psychotropic drugs in contempt of the recent order releasing him, and the doctor who testified that he shouldn't be on psychotropic drugs and shouldn't be institutionalized. Okay, so they put him in the group home. They receive over 50, well, they admitted to receive over $50,000 a month in the 903 South Harmon Group Home, where they conceal the medical records. They don't have to release the medical records, not liable to do so, and the seizures and EPS and all the other allegations concealed, the physical abuse, and so forth. And I guess my brother's allowed to be intimidated and not brought to the court, and public defender refuses to release the medical records and the other records, evidence, as opposed to making up lies like the Dr. Waknin saying that Zyprexa doesn't cause seizures. Well, okay, fine, so they can testify, commit perjury, very easy to prove that he should be in jail instead of being continuing to prescribe the drugs. But no, they continue prescribing the drugs, they continue poisoning him, and of course the social services, what can you expect from the police when the social workers tell him to his face that he's lying? He doesn't have seizures, and the regional center workers refuse to come to the court. They want to maybe make a puppet trial on September 11th, so continue lying, saying he doesn't have seizures, continue lying, saying he's not physically abused, continue concealing the records, using the conservatorship, and then 1 year, 7 months after he was released, Judge Hubbard illegally removes the conservatorship. So Judge Hubbard, despite having evidence that he was being physically abused by the same company that is now currently confining him and incarcerating him in the 903 South Harmon Group Home, having evidence of choking and physical abuse, she decided to remove conservatorship from the parents, and let's reward the abusers and the profiteers, give them conservatorship, and now the public defender is supporting them, supporting their to continue the physical abuse, financial abuse, psychotropic abuse. So you as a board you have the power to make sure the public defender does their job, and he should be released soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
The next 3 speakers, Jordan Hoiberg, Craig Monders, and Kevin Pierce.
You've changed your rhetoric since the last 3 meetings. I turned you into 6 different law enforcement agencies for your wonderful admonition not to mention the supervisors' names, and now we're getting lots of name calling here, which I'm happy about. I'm not going to go along with your cover-ups of anything. I'm just going to tell you what's going on. And this farce of a snitch scandal, which was concocted so that we could have somebody's coronation over there to make it look like Spitzer and Rackauckus are enemies, which they are not, which is fake news. So I can only do this really quickly. I have a situation here. I ran for Santa Ana mayor. This is the El Don Santa Ana College. It has a picture of the other two people running. Where am I? Not there. Funny, huh? The grandfather of all fake news, the Santa Ana Register. This is the actual size. Funny thing is, they don't mention that the person who arrested me for petty theft was the CEO's son, a drug addict. And they don't mention that every bit of evidence against me was fabricated. The OC Weekly, still another nice page of news, huh? Funny is, the thing is that now they're accusing me of selling library records. Whoa. You know what? They have no value. I also sued them and got every one of my records back. No library records. And the people who wrote this article now are the managing editor and the assistant managing editor of the OC Weekly. Who does this help? This helps Rackauckus, who sent his next-door neighbor to my house to frame me with new charges. LA Times, this is a good one. I'm saving it for next time. This is the Orange City News. Eugene Fields. Supposedly, I write him a letter telling him that the ketchup bottle, which he throws me in jail for, you know what? There is no ketchup bottle. Never produces it. I offer him $100,000 to bring in that letter, which supposedly I wrote to him admitting my guilt. There is none. The Century. Bob Fatur, his last article which he wrote before he died. Huh? It's printed on a Saturday, and he says that I'm a big bad person because I cost the district all kinds of money because of ketchup and all this other nonsense. He's dead the next day. His last article. Huh? And the wonderful Chapman University. Hey, our Orange Unified School District went to them to set me up. Front page, ugly picture on one side. They weren't satisfied. Also had a mockumentary about me. Still not satisfied. They set me up. All to get this man to be DA, this man who hates Christians,
Your time.
this man who hates Christians, and it obviously hates Jews too.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, Jordan, Chairwoman Steele's District. I'd like to start off by expounding a bit on what Mike Robbins said about trying to organize a sit-down with you guys. I know I've reached out to Chairwoman Steele's office, haven't heard back. I'll call an email again later this week. I give you my word that it won't be us just yelling at you like we do here. We do want a constructive conversation to see where there are areas we can work together. But now to move towards me yelling at you guys. I want to talk about the porta-potty issues. Or the restroom issue. Everybody keeps bringing it up. In particular, I would like to remind the board and Supervisor Spitzer of two demand letters that were sent a while back. One to Supervisor Spitzer in particular for his offer for $2,000 that was accepted. The other one for a potential Brown Act violation. We are reconsidering looking at litigation again over the board's intransigence on this issue. The second issue I'd like to bring up is Orange County Public Works. About a month ago, there was a document that activists found that was an Orange County Public Works presentation to the American Society of Civil Engineers. It seemed to detail in great detail, actually, how Public Works is being used to perform political evictions of people along the riverbed. I've done a PRA for all of Phil Jones' emails over the past year from Public Works for a map that we saw that seems to detail. It's a heat map of homeless populations, a calendar showing how areas of the riverbed that Public Works is targeting for evictions. I sincerely hope that these documents when I receive them, do not show that Public Works is being used systematically in the place of OC sheriffs to evict homeless people. However, if that is the case, I think at the least it'll be a good story for the newspapers. At the worst, I'll be talking to Brooke Weitzman, and we'll see what happens with that. But that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, honorable supervisors and staff. My name is Craig Monders. I'm a resident of North Seal Beach. Wanted to come today to express concern of residents of the northern Seal Beach area with regard to a proposed project of LA Fitness, which is attempted to be shoehorned in between a shopping center and a largely residential area. We're concerned that the city of Seal Beach has adopted an EIR which is predicated on statistically invalid data about the average daily trips and the other trip data with regard to the impact that's going to occur to our community due to traffic. The adjacent residential streets are all within the county jurisdiction, and we appreciate the letter that the county has already weighed in on this issue with regard to concerns about making statistically valid data the basis for any decisions that are made within the jurisdiction of the city. But unfortunately, the EIR has been certified. We're seeking an appeal, but we certainly need the county to weigh in on this issue because it is a county issue in addition to a concern and issue with regard to the city. So I want to again thank the county, but we still need help with this battle. And I think many members of the city of Seal Beach, at least, would be less inclined to be on the offensive side with regard, or defensive side, with regard to this subject, if we could at least believe the data that was in the EIR and that the decision is predicated on the impacts that will result to the trip distribution and the impact to the adjacent residential areas. So I'm seeking additional assistance with regard to traffic engineering specialty, something more compelling than the letter, because apparently the county's letter has not been sufficient to carry any weight with the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. Actually, the Planning Commission rejected, even EIR has been adopted, but Planning Commission already rejected that. Now they're waiting for the City Council members' vote. So I think all the residents should actually let City Council members about the concerns and, before they vote. So I have my chief of staff sitting there so we can just set up a meeting and then, we can talk about it, because I know that request came in and last week, right, for the meeting.
I believe that there's been a request pending since the, at least the adoption of the EIR, which was at least 3 weeks ago.
No, but we've been having meeting with one of my representatives went out, and then we've been having meeting with your residents. So many meetings about this. That's why we've been working together with the county. So if you can set up a meeting with my chief of staff there, Ari, can you just raise your hand? Then we can talk about it. Thank you very much for coming. Yeah.
After Kevin Pierce, the last three speakers are Lou Noble, Stephen Havens.
Good morning, Chairwoman
and Nala Kelly.
Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Pierce. I'm a 20-year resident of Rossmore, and I'm in your district, Ms. Steele. I'm the chairperson of the Coalition Against the LA Fitness Project, and I've spoken to your group at one time before, and we've had some correspondence via email, and I do thank you for the letter that the county put out in regards to the trip distribution, asking the Seal Beach Council to review the traffic data, but that data, it's already an EIR and it's been approved. So we have filed an appeal against that approval, and we have a hearing on September 12th coming up this next month. We are trying to have a meeting with your office. 2 weeks ago, I sent an email requesting a meeting, got no response. Made phone calls to your staff, got no response. Wednesday of last week sent Tiffany Kim a request for a meeting, got no response. So I'm standing here today, pleading and asking kindly for a face-to-face with either yourself or your staff in regards to the issues at hand that affect North Seal Beach and Rossmore in a very, very big way. This project is a project that will affect the way of life of hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people as far as traffic. Will also affect emergency services for people that are in Seal Beach and Los Alamitos traveling on Seal Beach Boulevard. It's going to add 3,000 trips a day to the area that's already congested with that shopping center. So we're requesting a meeting and ask kindly
As I told you, that I have my chief of staff sitting there, so just set the date and then come to my office.
Well, I've sent emails and I've got no response. So if he would just respond to one of my emails, then we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good morning, supervisors. My name is Steve Havens. I live in the Rossmore community. I'm here, as Kevin mentioned, with the coalition. I have lived in Rossmore for 46 years, 47 years. For the last 25 years, I have been impacted with the overflow parking from the adjoining high-density residential properties across the street on Montecito. And I have been over to the Rossmore Community Service District and asked their assistance in contacting your office for the traffic engineer that Kevin mentioned, and they have ignored me. So I'm pleading with your office, Mr. Steele, and to help in the review of the EIR, which excluded all parking for the community. It addressed the issues of Santa Ana, but it ignores the community of Rossmore, which is adjoining the property. We feel that this project is going to forever impact the community of Rossmore and its quiet, peaceful enjoyment of a neighborhood bedroom community. So we ask for your support. The meeting is scheduled for 9/11. As Kevin mentioned, the EIR is approved. We are appealing that. The conditional use permit was denied, and the developer has appealed for that. So the meeting is basically a very important meeting. We ask for your support. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
The last two speakers are Lou Noble and Nala Keali.
Good morning. My name is Nala Kayali. I'm the founder and executive director of Access California Services. We're a human service organization helping refugees and immigrants. I would like to thank the Board of Supervisors, HCA, and SSA for their continued support in keeping Orange County welcoming region for refugees. As you know, refugees continue to enrich our society fabric. Thank you for recognizing this population and giving them a new home to flourish and giving back to the community and become contributing citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you. More speakers?
Last speaker is Lou Noble.
Good morning, board community. Ezekiel 22:29 says, "The people of the land practice extortion and commit robbery. They oppress the poor and the needy, mistreat the foreigner, and deny them justice. The wrath of God will come upon this people." Now, know that none of you have been on the other side of the coin, not even when you stayed one night in the courtyard. You don't know how it feels. We're now in the 8th year of the 10-year plan to end homelessness, and yet you haven't allocated any funding, affordable housing, with all the money you have collected. If you would only spend $50 million towards housing instead of spending almost $300 million on boulders, fencing, and unconstitutional ordinances that do nothing but criminalize and oppress the homeless, which has led to depression and mental disorder, which has gotten worse. we're now finding ourselves in a depressed state. I repeat a quote, it's insanity doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We know how that's worked, right? And now you're ready to double the tax dollars to keep law enforcement doing your jobs. The people on both sides will not be happy, even your corporate cronies. Kids taken by authority, families are being separated, like Mr. Segelin's son, Nate. Homeless women waiting to get their kids back even when they're able to take care of them. You will find that money will no longer buy elections. Thank you.
Thank you. More speakers?
There are no more speakers.
That concludes the public comment section. We'll now proceed to the agenda for this morning's meeting. This agenda contains a brief description of each item to be considered. Except as otherwise provided by law, no action shall be taken on any item not appearing in today's agenda. The agenda is divided into sections. All matters on the consent calendar are approved by one motion unless a board member requests separate action on a specific item. With that, I ask clerk to identify any changes to the agenda today. Madam Clerk?
Yes, on the consent calendar, item 22 has been deleted. On the discussion calendar, item 31 has been deleted. Item 39 has been continued to September 12th, 2017, 9:30 a.m. Item 50 has been continued to October 17, 2017, 9:30 a.m. And supplemental 55B has been deleted. On the public hearing, item 56 has been continued to September 12th, 2017, 9:30 a.m.
Thank you. At this time, I ask my fellow supervisors for any items they wish to pull off the consent calendar, that numbers 1 through 24. Supervisor Bartlett? Supervisor Doe?
None, thank you.
None. Supervisor Spitzer?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved to second, and it's been passed without objections. We're going to move on to our discussion items. We're going to go into item 25.
Under the District Attorney, approve Amendment 4 to renew agreements for American Sign Language interpreting services with Astrid Heather Adair Hagen and with Global Works, Inc., doing business as Western Interpreting Network, and authorize County Procurement Officer or authorized deputy to execute amendments.
That's
Second.
no objections. It was moved by Supervisor Spitzer and seconded by Vice Chair Doe, and it's been passed. And we're going to move on to item 26.
Under Sheriff Coroner, approve Amendment 3 to renew agreement with Vector Aerospace USA, Inc., doing business as Vector Aerospace Helicopter Services USA for overhaul and repair of helicopter components and engines, and authorize County Procurement Officer or authorized deputy to execute amendment.
This is an all-district item.
Move the item.
Second.
Okay, moved by Vice Chair Doe and seconded by Supervisor Bartlett, and no objections. It's been passed. 27, please.
Under Sheriff Coroner, approve Amendment 5 to 5-year agreement with City of Stanton for law enforcement services.
Okay, this is a District 2 item, so I move the staff recommendations.
Second.
Okay, no objections. It passes. 28, please.
Under Sheriff Coroner, approve retroactive modification to intergovernmental service agreement with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement to increase supply of HIV/AIDS medications from 7 days to 30-day supply for transferring detainees, and authorize Sheriff Coroner or designee to execute agreement.
This is on District 1, 3, and 5 item.
Move the item.
Second.
No objections. It passes. 29, please.
Under Sheriff Coroner, approve agreement with Morpho Trust USA LLC, doing business as MT USA LLC for live scan equipment, accessories, supplies, software, and maintenance. Authorize County Procurement Officer or authorized deputy to execute agreement, and authorize Sheriff Coroner or designee to exercise cost contingency increase not to exceed 10% under certain conditions.
This is an all-district item.
Move the item.
Second.
No objections. Passes. 30, please.
Under Healthcare Agency, ratify amendment to Memorandum of Understanding with California Department of State Hospitals and California Mental Health Services Authority and participating counties for purchase of state hospital beds, and authorize director or designee to execute amendment.
This is an all-district item.
Move the item.
Second.
Okay. No objections. It passes. 31 has been deleted. We're going to move on to 32.
Under Healthcare Agency, approve selection of an agreement with Social Model Recovery Services, Inc. for co-occurring residential treatment services, and authorize director or designee to exercise cost contingency increase not to exceed 10% under certain conditions, and to execute agreement.
This is an all-district item.
Move the item.
Second.
No objections. Passes. 33, please.
Under John Wayne Airport, approve agreement with Transcore LP for hardware and software maintenance services. Authorize county procurement officer or authorized deputy to execute agreement and make CEQA and other findings.
This is an District 2, my item. So, Supervisor Bartlett.
Oh, go ahead if you want to.
Okay, I move the staff recommendations.
Okay, and I'll second that.
Okay.
And we did confirm that the hardware and software under this particular item is compliant with the new 6C technology that will be coming out. So essentially, those hard transponders that we all have in our cars right now are going to be replaced by the stickers that will be the 6C technology, and those will be replacing the transponders. But John Wayne Airport is completely compliant with the hardware and software requirements for the new technology. Thank you.
No objections. It passes. 34, please.
Under John Wayne Airport, approve agreement with Ramboll Environ U.S. Corporation for professional and technical air quality, greenhouse gas evaluation services, and to develop a climate action plan and make CEQA and other findings.
This is the 2nd District. I move the item.
Second.
Second.
Okay, no objections. Passes. 35, please.
Under John Wayne Airport, receive bids and award contract to All American Asphalt for pavement maintenance and repair project.
Move the staff recommendations.
Second.
No objections. Passes. 36, please.
Under OC Community Resources, consider first reading of an ordinance of the County of Orange, California, amending sections 4-1-3, 4-1-48, and 4-1-59 of the codified ordinances of the county to amend the definitions applicable to barking dog complaints to include animal nuisance and make various other amendments to barking dog complaint and citation process and criminal citation process pertaining to barking dogs, and set second reading and adoption for September 12, 2017, 9:30 a.m.
This is an all-district item.
Move the item.
I'll second this item, and just want to note for OCCR, because we're now encompassing not just barking dogs, but any kind of animal nuisance, so meowing cats or parrots or whatever is now included in this category. Just continue to give us feedback on how this ordinance is progressing. Thank you.
No objections. It passes. 37, please.
Under OC Community Resources, approve agreement with Merchants Landscape Services, Inc. for landscape maintenance services at Craig, Clark, Tri-City, and Carbon Canyon Regional Parks, and Clark Park Sports Park. Authorized County Procurement Officer or authorized deputy to execute agreement and make CEQA and other findings.
This is District 4. I move that.
Second.
Okay, no objections. Passes. 38, please.
Under OC Community Resources, approve agreement with Apex Management Corporation for janitorial services. Authorized County Procurement Officer or authorized deputy to execute agreement and related documents and exercise a cost contingency increase not to exceed 10% under certain conditions.
This is an all-district item.
Move the item.
Second.
Okay. No objections. Passes. 39 continued to September 12th, 2017. We're going to move on to 40, please.
Under OC Community Resources, adopt resolution ratifying Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act sub-grant agreement and authorize director designee to execute agreement, related documents, and amendments under certain conditions and accept additional projected funding increase as well as unilateral modifications to decrease from the state.
This is an all-district item.
Move the item.
Second.
No objections. No objections. Passes. 41, please.
Under OC Public Works, approve Amendment 3 to agreement with LA Consulting, Inc. for maintenance system enhancement and program management services to incorporate additional tasks and authorize county procurement officer or authorized deputy to execute amendment.
This is an all-district item.
Move the item.
Second.
No objections, passes. 42, please.
Under OC Waste and Recycling, approve Amendment 2 to renew agreement with Civil Environmental Survey Group, Inc., doing business as CES for operation and maintenance services of leachate groundwater extraction system and various liquid conveyance systems, central region landfills, and authorize county procurement officer, authorized deputy to execute agreement.
This is District 2 and 3 item. Move our second. No objections, passes. 43, please.
Under Social Services Agency, approve agreement with Access California Services for Refugee Social Services and Refugee Health Services. Authorize director or designee to execute agreement and exercise a cost contingency increase not to exceed 10% under certain conditions.
This is District 4 item. I move the item.
Second.
Okay. No objections, passes. 44, please.
Under County Executive Office, approve Amendment 4 to lease and amended and restated parking license agreement with Warland Investment Company for office space and public service center for Social Services Agency, West Regional Center, Cypress. Authorize Chief Real Estate Officer or designee to execute subsequent lease amendments for non-monetary and or monetary changes under certain conditions, and delegate Chief Real Estate Officer or designee ability to exercise any option to extend term of lease pursuant to Clause 6.
Move the item.
Second.
No objections, passes. 45, please.
Under County Executive Office, approve recommended positions on introduced or amended legislation and consider other legislative subject matters.
All district item.
Move the item.
Second.
Supervisor Spitzer.
Yeah, I have a question about one of these bills. Jessica, I think we asked you questions about the California Association of Realtors position versus the League of Cities. Was that the Senate bill? Was that the Wiener bill, SB 35? There were some changes, right? There were some significant amendments in the bill that was sponsored by the League. Oh, it's AB 879, right? Yeah, it's the AB. Okay. So could you, I wanted to find out why the California Association of Realtors was in support of the bill. Could you explain that, please?
I'm going to actually, I know that Platinum Advisors is here in the audience today, and they had reached out to the, on that specific question yesterday.
Hey, Amy.
Hi.
Good morning.
Madam Chairwoman, members, Amy Jenkins. Actually, the question that was directed was concerning SB 35 by Senator Wiener. We do know that the Realtors are actively supporting that bill. That bill was amended, I believe, on July 21st. 879, which is an assembly bill by Mr. Grayson, was significantly amended. I am not aware of whether the Realtors are actively supporting that bill or not, but to your question, it was significantly amended. It was originally supported by the California State Association of Counties and the League of California Cities, but due to the latest amendments, they are now in opposition.
But what's the policy issue? That's what I'm trying to understand. Right. Why are the Realtors in support?
Well, the question that was directed to me was on SB 35 and the ministerial process that the senator is proposing in 35. And I don't have the specifics as to why the Realtors are actively supporting, but I would assume if they are essentially streamlining the process to allow for construction of housing to be built in a more expedited fashion, that would seem to be something the Realtors would be supporting, and I do know they are actively working that bill.
Okay, so that's why I'm having the rub, because we have a very big problem in our county with affordable housing. Anything you can do to streamline but still be responsible, I generally think is a good thing. Right. So when I see the Realtors are supporting something but the League isn't, I'm just trying to understand if the League is being told you can't have as much, or the cities would be probably being told you're not going to have as much oversight, like we're going to expedite the process, so maybe you'll have less influence. That's just because what I'm guessing.
That would be consistent with the arguments that they've raised and the concerns, yes.
Okay, but that involves a much more active conversation than just a no by our board, because the public policy, I think every one of us up here feels that CEQA and some of the other regulations are so burdensome that it's prohibitive of why we can't build housing. So that's why I wanted to get more of a briefing. I would encourage us not to take a no position on this until we understand whether the realtors are right and we're actually trying to achieve a public policy goal that makes sense to build housing in a more expeditious fashion, as opposed to why the league now is opposed. I really don't understand what the amendments are trying to do. So if you look at the support and oppose, I mean, it's extremely extensive. Like, a lot of people are following this legislation on both sides. And when I look at the different groups on either side, there's no, it's like a mixed bag. I mean, there's no real theme. Generally, you can see support and oppose, and you can formulate some conclusions. I can't really formulate any conclusions by the support and oppose, but there must be over 200 groups here, or at least 100 groups, who have weighed in on this bill, which means it's a very significant piece of legislation and probably is trying to make some significant changes. So could you advise, I mean, they're in their last, 3 weeks of session? This bill is going to move through one way or another, right?
The bill is currently in the Assembly Rules Committee, a pending review. We believe it'll be taken up as part of the broader housing package that's being contemplated. We are hearing up to 10 bills potentially as part of that endeavor. So we do assume the bill will be taken up. It will be pulled out of rules. But to your point, we don't know what that process looks like as the full housing package is still being developed.
Well, somebody wrote in our staff report, oppose, unless amended, to review the reasonableness of local fees charging new residential development and propose amendments to mitigation fees. So I'm guessing the locals are concerned they may not get the monies. It says something about money probably at the end of the day. Don't we have a housing department here in the county that kind of helps us with this stuff? Jessica?
It's Julia.
Or, yeah.
Jessica Witt. Yes, that was when we worked with OC Public Works on this bill, and that was one of the concerns that they expressed was any potential limitation on those mitigation fees that could come to local governments.
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, we're not going to resolve it with our position on this bill, but we have to build more housing. Our rents are out of control in this county, and it's about supply and demand. So if the realtors are behind a bill trying to streamline the process, I generally defer to the realtors. I mean, they generally know what they're talking about. And so I'm very uncomfortable taking oppose today without more. If the board wants to move forward, fine, I'll just vote no. But it seems, we don't meet again for 2 weeks, which may be a little too late to weigh in. But what amendments are we seeking? How about that question?
On which bill, sir? I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, let's talk about Grace and AB 879, opposed unless amended. What amendments are we trying to get?
On 879, we're looking to amend the bill to remove the provision to review the reasonableness of local fees, because that's not clearly defined in the legislation as to what exactly that would mean. And then to also amend the bill to remove the provision that requires new substantial analysis in our future housing element. A lot of that hasn't been clearly defined and could, although it may not be a significant impact, could have an impact on any future revisions to the housing element.
This is a very complex area of this is significant public policy, which has great impacts, right? We're not going to study it or resolve it here. So I kind of defer to my colleagues on it. I'm a little uncomfortable about it right now.
Okay, Supervisor Roberts.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I think with both of these bills, with SB 35 and AB 879, it goes to in the face of local control, and that's a real issue because with SB 35, there's now HCD has a lot more power and control than they've ever had before. And we don't have then control at the local level because HCD can determine to provide for some exemptions for jurisdictions that are deemed by HCD to be pro-housing, not determined by our county. And it also requires annual reports, so a lot more in the way of administration and process. And then it doesn't meet the RENA by income level. And when you take a look at the specifics of the actual bill, the number of entitled and approved applications is what they're focusing on rather than building permits. And so when you talk about affordable housing And you talk about HCD, it gives them a lot more control than we really want to provide them at the local level. And that's why I think it's an oppose unless amended, because unless we get some of these amendments in here, they're going to control what we do with regard to our housing stock, where it can be built, and providing jurisdictions favoritism based on their specific requirements, not the county. So we might deem that certain areas of the county we want to build out affordable housing, and HCD can come in and override that and say, no, it's not on our preferred list. We're going to overrule you, County of Orange, and you can't build your housing in Anaheim. You need to build it in Fullerton or San Juan Capistrano. And that should be our decision, because we need to determine where the affordable housing or housing should be built, not Sacramento. And then with regard to AB 879, when you talk about the, quote, reasonableness of fees, we know what happens with Sacramento. HCD gets to determine what that level of reasonable fees is, and that becomes an unfunded mandate down for us at the county level. So I have a real problem with that. So I agree with the legislative staff's recommendation and to have an oppose unless amended, because we do need those amendments to bring back local control, let the county decide what it wants, and also we've got to determine what is this reasonableness of fees. We don't know if it's $10 or $10,000, and we need to get a handle on that before we can move forward with any kind of legislation that we're comfortable with. Thank you.
Supervisor Doe.
Supervisor Spitzer, I will always honor your request if you need more time to kind of convince yourself as to the vote today. But I agree with Supervisor Bartlett. It's a question of local control, but couched to me in a more universal theme, which is Sacramento is moving more and more of local issues into state control. If you look at the proposed language in SB 35, we're talking about a new law that would establish a planning agency that would provide an annual report on the general plan as to each community's regional housing needs. But here's the rub. Up until now, chartered cities are exempt from these legislations. But now the SB 35 and AB 879 will apply to charter cities as well. And so when you look at charter cities, that exclude a lot of the cities from the reach of this type of legislation. But with the new proposed legislations, I see this as covering more of the cities that up until now have not been under the control of Sacramento, in addition to the additional requirements placed on cities stated by Supervisor Bartlett. And so I think with the struggles that we have had recently discussed up here on different issues, Cal Optima and such, this is important that we be consistent in moving ahead, that there are issues that we believe should be subject to local control, because we know best our housing needs, and the cities know best, the needs of their communities, and we should not agree to take wholesale this type of effort and maybe even oversight up to Sacramento. That's where I come from, just to give you kind of maybe food for thought. Thank you.
Supervisor Spitzer.
Yeah, I think you both make compelling arguments. You made me a lot more comfortable through your expression, so I'm willing to support it now. Thank you for articulating your positions.
Supervisor Bartlett.
And I just want to thank our legislative staff. I know these two items are really important to us and can adversely affect our county. And I appreciate our leg staff and Platinum Advisors really getting on top of this and working hard for us in Sacramento, getting our point across. It's a very conservative county, and I know it's not always easy up there, but thank you very much for your efforts.
I believe there is a motion on the floor, right?
And seconded already.
Yes.
Okay, no objections, passes. 46, please.
Under County Executive Office, approve grant applications and awards submitted by OC Community Resources, Sheriff Coroner, and Healthcare Agency in August 22nd, 2017 grant report, and other actions as recommended. Adopt resolution authorizing OC Community Resources Director or designee to conduct negotiations, execute and submit all related documents and amendments with State Department of Parks and Recreation for Outdoor Environmental Education Facilities Grant Program for Liso and Wood Canyons, Fossil and Watershed Interactive Experiences, Irvine Regional Natural Play Area, O'Neill Regional Park Amphitheater redesign and expansion of Saddleback Gateway Park Interpretive Trail and Amphitheater, and adopt resolution authorizing OC Community Resources Director designee to accept emergency solutions grant for Santa Ana, Anaheim, Orange County Continuum of Care, and execute standard agreement, any subsequent amendments and related documents to the program, and adopt resolution authorizing sheriff, coroner, or designee to execute and submit to California Office of Emergency Services the fiscal year 2017 Emergency Management Performance Grant application.
This is an all-district item.
Move the item.
Second?
No objections. Passes. 47, please.
Under County Executive Office, ratify retroactive Amendment 1 to lease with Dolphin Safari, Inc. for dolphin and whale watching services at Dana Point Harbor, and authorize Chief Real Estate Officer or designee to execute subsequent lease amendments that do not increase costs by more than $50,000 per year.
This is a District 5 item.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I know this is a retroactive agreement. It just took a while to get the negotiations taken care of with CEO of Real Estate, but this is a great tenant in the harbor, longtime tenant, and they provide a lot of revenue for Tidelands Trust in the harbor. The tenant was on an extended travel schedule for a period of time, but I think we're ready to move forward on this item, so I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, no objections. Passes. 48, please.
Under County Executive Office, ratify standard agreement with California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection for wildland fire protection services to state responsibility areas, and adopt resolution approving assignment of standard agreement to Orange County Fire Authority.
This is an all-district item.
Second?
Seconded by Supervisor Bartlett. No objections. Passes. 49, please.
Under County Executive Office, approve Amendment 2 to agreement with Platinum Advisors, LLC for Sacramento Legislative Advocacy Services, and authorize County Procurement Officer or authorized deputy to execute amendment.
I want to ask some questions here. The staff. Oh, it's Jessica. How long Platinum's been with us? When was the first contract was signed?
Sure. Platinum Advisors assumed the contract from Mayor Brown in 2006, and that was we had Scott Baugh changed firms, and then that is when Platinum Advisors first received the contract, was in 2006.
2006 until when?
What's
the history?
So 2006, and then we let an RFP again in 2007.
Okay.
And then there was an RFP in 2014.
Okay. So how many the years left here? So if we approve this, then what? What was the contract on 2014?
So 2014, it was a 2-year agreement with three options for 1-year extensions. So we, the board approved the original 2 years. The third year was approved administratively in accordance with the CPM, and the item before you today is for the 4th 1-year term. So there would, depending on the board's actions today, there is the option for 1 additional year in the contract.
Okay. Okay, let me go to Supervisor Bartlett.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to come back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've got a lot going on in Sacramento, and I know that our legislative staff here and the staff at Platinum Advisors has been really busy representing the county in Sacramento. We're working on a whole host of things that takes time to build, like the coalition for dealing with issues like the funding equity. We've got IHSS, and I know our CEO is working very closely with our with Platinum Advisors in Sacramento. This is something that could really impact our county in a couple of years. So we're working through that process because this could potentially be a $40 million plus hit to our county. So we're working through the details on that. We've got a lot of successes like AB 403, the 10-day carve-out for Orangewood, which was great for our county. SB 302, which is the Mendoza bill, which affects OCFA. Supervisor Spitzer and I are very much engaged in this particular piece of legislation. Again, we're looking at local control, and that's something that our lobbying team up there in Sacramento really advocates for us. In looking at the accomplishments that's been done over the years, I think they've represented the county extremely well. They take note of the things that are important to the county and the supervisors, and help us implement good things up in Sacramento. And I know it's not always easy because we're a very conservative county and a very liberal state, and so we have those inherent challenges, but we try to work through them as best we can. I've seen firsthand the relationships that they've established over the last 11 years with business leaders and legislators and other lobbying groups up there, and seeing what they can do for the County of Orange. So I'm very pleased by what they've been able to accomplish, and I would make a motion to approve this one-year extension. Thank you.
Actually, I wanted this. Okay, motion on the floor. Okay. I want to actually ask our fellow supervisors to delay this because few things have been done, but always we can improve because the relationship that what we have as an Orange County, that we've been always odd county in the state, and I think we can do better working together with the Platinum. Then I want to see the future that, what kind of relationship that we're going to grow instead of that, what we cannot do because we might going to offend in Sacramento legislators, instead of that, what we really can stand and we're going to work together. At this point, that I was not really satisfied about the property tax matters. That last year when we had a meeting together, and they promised that try to get all the small counties together so we can get more property taxes than, because right now that we are getting only 6 cents out of dollar, and Los Angeles gets 23 cents out of dollar. Something has to be done a little more than what we are doing at this point. So I want to sit down, if other supervisors agree with me, I'd rather sit down with Platinum that what's going to be our future and how we're going to approach these legislators in Sacramento. So I'd rather just hold off until that Supervisor Nelson comes back too, because he has to put his input in it too. So that's what I want to do. That's why I started this, and then, but there's a motion and seconded. But let's start talking and discuss about this. Supervisor Doe.
Madam Chair, as I indicated earlier in the prior vote, I will always honor my colleagues' request for time to deliberate and elicit more facts and feel comfortable when we get around to voting. I myself also have some questions on some recent legislative developments. I think going forward, whether we stay with Platinum or not, I think it would benefit us tremendously to have, as a board, as a county, a bigger game plan. Where do we go from here? Do we want to just deal with issues one at a time as they come up, or do we have a strategic plan going forward? I know Supervisor Nelson mentioned a lot of things that, the reimbursement to the county, and the tax, the money that comes back to the county. Those are just some things that we just have to think kind of longer term and on a bigger scale. Right now, I find myself just going from legislation to legislation without a big coherent strategy. So I'm supportive of your request, and I think with more information that we will be in a better position to make the right decision for ourselves. Thank you.
So Jessica, this contract is from October 1st, so we still have time if we can bring it on September 12th meeting, right?
Yes, and we have 3 weeks between then, and we're happy to arrange whatever meetings your board desires.
Thank you. Supervisor Spitzer?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I give great deference, just like Supervisor Doe, to my colleague's request. So if that's what you're requesting, I'll certainly honor it. I would just have you consider one thing. We're in the last couple weeks of the session, and there are a lot of bills that we're working, and I don't want to send the wrong message to Sacramento that we're neutering or weakening our advocacy team. So there's nothing to take away from the fact that you can have this conversation at any time. I'm sorry. What's wrong, Leon?
Who made the motion? So.
No. You always say important things. I want to.
Motion. So if it's the will of the board to continue this item, I would ask that Supervisor Bartlett withdraw her motion, so that the board not vote on that.
Right, but I'm trying to argue why we shouldn't withdraw the motion. But if you want to be the sixth supervisor, you can sit up here if you want. No, all kidding aside, I don't see why you couldn't engage in that exact same conversation anyway, nevertheless. But I don't want the rumblings in Sacramento from our delegation to misinterpret why that might happen. It's on the agenda today, and so I just would ask you to consider that. I mean, they are going into the last weeks of the session, which means they'll be standing in the halls, okay, which is, you've been up there in the last couple days. I did it 6 times. It's chaos. And the last thing I want is Senator Mendoza or somebody else who's carrying legislation against our county at Fire Authority and other places to not take seriously our confidence in our legislative team. So I just asked you to consider that.
I don't know why that's going to be affecting in Sacramento, because I'm just asking that, we're really looking at the future, that how we're going to move and work together. That's the only thing I'm requesting. So I want to see that what their plan, what our plan is, and then we try to, work together. That's very important, because Washington, D.C. lobbyists, the same thing too. They're the one actually connecting us. It's kind of like a bridge, and it's a very important position. So that's why I'm asking to give us a little more time. And we still have a contract throughout till October 1st. So no one is challenging their current contract at this point. So we can still continuing to talk. Supervisor Bartlett.
Okay, I just want to emphasize also what Supervisor Spitzer just said. The next 3 weeks in Sacramento are extremely crucial. We've got a lot of things that are pending up there, and which the optics are really important. So, if it's the will of the board right now to move this into September 12th, we've got to move it then to that date and be prepared to make a decision. But I think the messaging that we want to get out right now is that we are, supportive of our lobbying firm in Sacramento, and we just want to fine-tune some of the details on our work plan for moving forward. But we want to send a positive message. We want to be consistent, and the optics are extremely important because they're up there representing our county, and we want to make sure that the legislators and the governor and everyone knows that we've got a cohesive team. We're just going to be fine-tuning our work plan for next year.
Okay, let me remind you that we have a contract until October 1st. So October 1st is the date. So even we're going to bring it back, it doesn't mean that they're going to stop working. Supervisor Spitzer?
Yeah, I just wanted to make an observation about just a couple things. Supervisor Nelson and I sat in the governor's office and met with the governor's chief of staff, Nancy McFadden, over this whole equity issue. And, that meeting was only gotten, if you will, not because I requested it or Sean requested it, it's because our advocates requested it for us. Just because we had a face-to-face with Nancy McFadden didn't mean that Nancy McFadden was going to suddenly jump up and say, you're right. Orange County has historically gotten less money because of Prop 13, and it was ag at the time, and so a lot of the land is grandfathered in, and the formula was grandfathered in over the last 40, 50 years. I mean, they're advocates. They're not miracle workers. They don't get to wave magic wands up there and just have everybody, have the will of Orange County. So, I mean, you talk about equity. Look at the fight we're having with equity. Look at the closed session we're going to have and discuss, issues with respect to the city of Irvine and payments of ad valorem tax. I mean, the issues go on and on and on, and they're so complicated. So I would just keep in mind that they're tasked with an agenda, but if you interpret, or if anybody were to interpret the lack of success, say, for example, in equity, with respect to their performance, I think we have to make sure we keep a perspective on that, because some of the things that we're asking have never historically been able to be achieved long before platinum was on the horizon. We've been fighting equity when Scott Baugh was our advocate, and when, who was before Baugh? Oh, Denny Carpenter, for God's sakes. I mean, may he rest in peace. Dennis Carpenter was a longtime senator. He was I was here when Dennis Carpenter in the late 90s, before he passed away, was our advocate. And he couldn't accomplish these things, and he's a former member of the legislature. So, just like Scott Baugh. So just understand, let's keep some perspective here of what our expectations might be.
Okay. I am just requesting that we're going to vote on September 12th. If other supervisors are okay with that. So I can sit down, actually, we can talk about the future, that how we're going to build a relationship and we're going to build it together and it's going to be better for Orange County. It's equity issue, it's just only one of them. So I'm not just talking about equity only, but we really have to work together. That's the only thing I'm asking. Supervisor Bartlett, can you, your motion?
Yes, I will then withdraw my motion and support you for the moving of this item, which is September the 12th. And with regard to funding equity, there's the financial pie. So if out of the 58 counties, if Orange County is going to get more than our 6 cents, the average county gets 17 cents back on the dollar. We get 6 cents. And if we want to have more than 6 cents, if you look at the financial pie, the other 57 counties, somebody is going to have to take less in order for us to get more. And that's part of our challenge up there in Sacramento because, like I said, we're a very conservative county here and a very liberal state. And it's, Supervisor Spitzer's right. We can't expect everyone to be a miracle worker and wave the magic wand, and all of a sudden we get 12 cents back, which is double of what we get right now, because somebody else then has to take less. And that's the challenge we have to work within. We have to build that coalition, bipartisan, to ensure that Orange County can get more than our 6 cents, and how we're going to fairly distribute what each county then would get less so that we can get a little bit more and make our case in Sacramento. And that's going to take time to build that bipartisan coalition to make some progress there. But I think it can be done, but it's a significant effort. Thank you.
I came from the tax agency. I totally understand how it works, and I'm just equity issue is only one of the little ones that I just want to sit down and I want to talk about the future together. So, Supervisor Doe.
Thank you. If we have any concern that our putting this item over is going to maybe cast our lobbyists in a negative light, weakening their power to lobby on our behalf, well, the discussion in the last 5 minutes and the direction that we took us into that direction. The discussion in the beginning and the request from the chair was more time for us to look at our strategy and to discuss it and have a coherent plan, and there was no criticism involved. Somehow the discussion got kind of hijacked in that direction, and now it's a question of performance. And I think that's misstating the request. And so if our concern really is to try to continue to empower our lobbyists to lobby for us, then let's just go ahead and concede or accede to what the chair is asking, is for more time for us to look at the role of our lobbyists and which direction we want to move in. And that's it. Leave it at that. Let's not go into specifics.
Okay, County Council, so it's okay that it's been continued to September 12th. Okay, yes. Thank you. Thank you. And we're going to move on to item 50.
Under Human Resource Services, approve third amended and restated WellWise Choice Health Plan and second amended and restated ShareWell Choice Health Plan documents.
This is an all-district item.
Move the item.
Our second, no objections, passes. 52, please.
Under Human Resource Services, approve third amended and restated WellWise Retiree and ShareWell Retiree Health Plan documents.
This is an all-district item.
Move the item.
Second.
No objections, passes. 53, please.
Under Human Resource Services, approve Amendment 3 to Agreement with California Physician Services, doing business as Blue Shield of California for claims administration, cost management services, and preferred provider organization network for self-insured PPO health plans and management and attorney dental plan. And authorize Chief Human Resources Officer or designee to execute amendments.
This is an all-district item.
Move the item.
Second.
No objections, passes. 54, please.
Under Human Resource Services, approve Amendment 5 to Agreement with Optum Prescription Administrative Services, LLC, for administration of prescription drug card and mail order program, and authorize Chief Human Resource Officer or designee to execute amendment and make modifications.
This is an all-district item.
Move the item.
Second, And no objections, passes. 55, please.
Under Human Resource Services, ratify 5-year internship and cooperative education site agreement with California State University Long Beach to facilitate non-clinical fieldwork internship placement of undergraduate and graduate students within county departments, and authorize Chief Human Resources Officer designee to modify agreement under certain conditions.
This is an all-district item.
Move the item.
Second.
No objections, passes. 55A, please.
Under Sheriff Coroner, approve fiscal year 2016-17 federal equitable sharing agreements and certification reports for federally forfeited property or proceeds received for Sheriff Coroner Department Regional Narcotics Suppression Program and Orange County Proactive Meth Lab Investigative Task Force.
Okay. I'll make the motion, but I want to have a statement that I want to read. I had my staff again speak with the Sheriff's Department when I saw this item. Before I speak, I need a second, the motion for this.
Second.
Okay, good. I saw this item come up as it does each year. The item itself covers funding from the last fiscal year that's already been disbursed to the department. We voted on the similar item on the consent calendar for the DA. The only reason this item is not on consent is because it was added late to the agenda. I continue to be very concerned about the seizure of assets from people before they are convicted of a crime. I understand the cases where assets are seized, and the law enforcement often have very good reason to believe the seized assets are from criminal activity. Still, in our system, a person is innocent until proven guilty. The Sheriff's Department gave me the forms they use. When a person wants to contest the seizure and ask for the money or property back, as well as a receipt they get from the district attorney, and the disclaimer form that when individuals say the property or money is not theirs, which apparently happens a lot. I believe that it is very important to have each of these steps as well as the appeal process that's in place to get seized property back, because we have to give everyone due process. I would like to be able to work with the sheriff and district attorney to do a better job where the county won't take funds until after the due process runs its course. Better to have to wait for someone to appeal and be denied on the basis of facts than to force the person to jump through the hoops to get their property back if it turns out in a particular case it shouldn't have been seized. Supervisor Spitzer?
Well, we need to talk about this because I did have a conversation with the sheriff about whether she would support waiting until the adjudication, or the outcome, if you will, of the status of somebody's innocence or guilt, and then the nexus of their criminal activity with respect to the use of the property. And at that time, in that conversation, she seemed like she was supportive, so I thought there was a door open on that. Her response back to me was, most of the time, those who are charged or accused of particular criminal conduct, especially depending on the items, would generally deny any ownership interest whatsoever in the items, okay? Well, if somebody denies an ownership interest in the item, then there's no controversy because they're saying it's not mine, right. All right? So I think you probably would agree, Madam Chair, then we would be comfortable seizing that, and law enforcement and other governmental agencies could use either the sale or the forfeiture of that particular property. Who is here from the Sheriff's Department or the DA's office to talk about that issue? It's a very, very important issue. Oh, Sheriff, you are here. So I shouldn't represent. I didn't see you, ma'am. Do you want to address the chair's concern and my concern, if you wouldn't mind? I guess the question is, are there circumstances in which these programs can be run so the chair so that we can balance the adjudication and the due process as against the forfeiture? And honestly, I don't even know if this item in front of us, because it's receiving properties from the governmental agencies, and they also have procedures. If maybe that's already included in this item, I don't know the answer to that.
Yes, Supervisor, and board members. As you know, the federal the Attorney General just came out with some new guidelines that really shortens the time frame in terms of our acting and then receiving some kind of challenge to what we have seized. There are already guidelines in place, but that being said, as we've discussed before, and as my office has discussed with the chairwoman, we are very interested in talking about ways we could prevent any kind of seizure that is improper. I know this is a concern that people have. I think I understand the concern. I'd love to have the conversation, as we've spoke before. Largely, seizures, as I have seen in Orange County, that result from our regional narcotics suppression program and that's typically where they occur, these are drug cartels. These are people engaged with cartel activity. I have heard from people in the community, I've heard concern with, well, I'm concerned that you're going to take my house because my daughter got arrested with drugs in the house. That's not what we're talking about. Those are not the kinds of incidents where seizures take place. But I do think there is a segment of the community that believes that. So I really would love to discuss it with you and do what we could to educate the public, do what we can. We do not want to see someone's property who's not engaged in criminal activity. Right. Absolutely.
Well, at least it'd be adjudicated. Well, can we agree to this so we don't spend all day on this? Because I know I talked to you about this a couple months ago, Sheriff, and probably should have followed up on it on my part. And I saw this item too, and I thought it was an opportunity to have the same discussion that the chairwoman brought up, and so I'm pleased by that. I mean, this would typically be an OIR assignment, right, where we would ask OIR to kind of examine this and report back. And what I think would be helpful is if county council could work with the sheriff and the DA to go through and make sure, and so they could present to us, that we're publicly ensuring that there is an adjudicatory process prior to the receipt and disbursement of assets. And I think, Sheriff, you were the one, and you made that good point, and I said it earlier, that like in drug cartels, they're saying, ain't mine, right? So, I mean, there's no issue there. I don't feel like anybody's challenging that. But there could be instances, and I've heard of it, pharmaceutical manufacturers. We're going to get a lot of this now because of the whole marijuana issue, where labs are raided and all kinds of things. And there's going to be people challenging the legality and efficacy of that. So I think it would be really great to be proactive. If we could do that, I think, and report back to the board, Madam Chair, I think that way county council, the sheriff, and the DA can look at the policies, and then they can explain to us, and then that way, albeit to the public, about exactly how property is forfeited and dispersed. So if you would support that, Madam Chair, I think it's an excellent project. I think it's long overdue.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sheriff. Supervisor Bartlett.
Okay, Sheriff Hutchins, I think that the reason the property is impounded is because and this has to do with a lot of the potential criminal activity that's going on out there that's pretty significant. But if you have to wait to seize assets until everything gets adjudicated in the court system, then wouldn't these assets in many cases just sort of vanish? They would disappear.
Yeah.
And it's not the seizure? Okay, can you clarify that?
Yeah, the sheriff should explain. It's not the seizing.
So it's, yes, in answer to your question, sometimes no one claims the property. Sometimes there is a name to the property, but there is a structured process by which someone can say, no, that's my property, I'm not engaged in criminal activity. So there is that process to deal with that. And it's a case-by-case thing. In some cases, yes, we would have that concern. The goal of seizing property is to stop the criminal activity, stop the funding of the criminal activity, whatever that property is. Typically, it is cash or product. Atypically, it's a house, residential house, that, I would say more often than not, it's cash that we're talking about. And it's cash that someone may say, as I discussed with Supervisor Spitzer, I don't know where that's not my money. And so to answer your question, that could disappear if we allow that person to keep that money. How do we know whose money it is, really, when it's cash? So, but there is, I want to reinforce, there's a very structured process overseen by federal and state that we have to go through. There are forms that are filled out. I just pulled down the new forms that were sent out by the Attorney General Sessions today, because they've made some changes, but they've also tightened it up to ensure that law enforcement is not seizing properties without due process.
Okay. Are most of the seizures done through the other means, like Department of the Treasury or other entities?
Yes, Department of
Justice?
Treasury, DOJ, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So there's a motion by me and seconded by Vice Chair Doe, and no objections, it passes. 55B has been deleted, and 55C.
Under Vice Chair Doe, Emergency Medical Care Committee, appoint Arturo Pedrosa Santa Ana to complete term ending June 30th, 2019.
Move the item.
No objections, passes. 55, supplemental item 55D.
Under County Executive Office, approve proposed response to fiscal year 2016-17 grand jury report, The Myth of the Orange County Jailhouse Informant Program.
This is an all district item.
Move the item.
Second.
No objections. Supervisor Spitzer.
Yeah, Mr. Tanizaki, I see. Are you answering questions on this? So, Mr. Kim, we have our response. We were only asked to do finding 9 and response 8. Our response was waiting for the DA's response, and now, Mr. Tanizaki, your office has filed the response. So now it's like, what? Now that we had that, we had it for, I want to say maybe a week. So why are we leaving ours open-ended? Since ours is coming subsequent, we could actually take into account the DA's response, which is the whole issue about whether Mr. Larson's law firm would continue. So, Mr. Tanizaki, do you have a position? I mean, I read your response. It seems like you think it's still a good idea to have it, but could you clarify so the board could understand?
Sure. Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, Jim Tanizaki, Chief Assistant DA, and happy to answer Supervisor Spitzer's question. Our assessment, current assessment of Stephen Larson is that he's not finished with his overall investigation and review process. He's still pending another report of the assessment that has not been submitted and completed. So until we get that report, I don't think we can call it a day here.
Okay.
And when we get that report, we could review it, assess it to see what, if any, function he may have. But we still find that there will be utility potentially with his oversight as we continue the progress in this area.
Okay, so the last report that I think Mr. Larson wrote is from memory. I want to say it was December of 16. Yeah, I know it's before he started almost a year-long trial in San Bernardino.
Right.
So is that the last report? Is that his last report,
yes,
December 16?
He's only written
one
report.
Okay. So then so the board was sent a courtesy copy of that, and that was December 16. Okay. Right. So since December 16, he hasn't submitted anything formally in writing.
Right. Now, we understand that it is forthcoming.
Well, he's been pretty occupied. I mean, he's full-time in trial.
And there was a significant amount of work that his firm had to conduct. There were a lot of interviews, a lot of documentation, so many things that the firm had to do in order to do this next report. So we understand that this report, as opposed to his first one, which was more of an introduction, this is going to be, we think, a much more substantive, sustained review.
All right. So he's going to issue a report, and your office has attorney-client privilege with him pursuant to the contract.
Right.
Are you going to waive attorney-client privilege so we can read the individual, the things he used in his assessment to write his report? Are we going to be able to see a compilation of work that went into it?
I think if you want to review, I think the amount of materials that his firm reviewed, we sent over a large grouping of materials and paperwork and.
No, I'm talking about his interviews. Like he did, I saw the billables. They were here last time we talked about this, and they did a ton of interviews with Bruce Moore before he left, the DNA unit, yada, yada, yada. And so I'm just saying, are we going to be able to see all those interviews?
You know, I don't know about that because, frankly, we don't even know all the people he's interviewed, and some of those people may not want to be known as being interviewed by the firm. So I think that's a very difficult thing to answer.
That's fair. Okay. All right. Well, you helped a lot. And then, so Mr. Kim, then our response is, you're gonna work with the DA's office over the next 90 days to kind of pinpoint this for the board?
Yes.
Right. What's his billables to date? Do you know what the billables are?
I do not know.
But he's still within the contract amount.
You know what? I'm not positive exactly where he is because I think the contract ended or is ending. The contract year ends like what days? It might be like today or tomorrow. It's in the next couple of days.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we enter a new contract year.
Right, but he was given, it seemed like he had plenty of money based upon the billables, but you would have to come back if it exceeded that, clearly.
Right, but we're also entering this
new
period.
year. Okay. All right. Mr. Tanzaki, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
There's a motion on the floor, right?
Yes.
Who made the motion?
Motion by Vice Chair Doe and second by Supervisor Bartlett.
Okay, no objections, it passes. We're going to move on to 55E.
Under Social Services Agency, approve agreement and license agreement with Olive Crest for provision of sibling residential home services, Tustin Family Campus, and make sequent other findings.
This is a District 3 item.
Second.
Okay, no objections?
3.
Passes. 50.
You moved, right? Okay, that's what.
Okay. 55F. Is that F? E?
Under County Executive Office, approve revised time schedule and authorize Chief Real Estate Officer or designee to approve payments to Low Enterprises Real Estate Group for costs related to processing entitlements for development of county-owned properties located at former Marine Corps Air Station El Toro, effective through completion of Phase 1 of Disposition and Development Agreement, and authorize Auditor Controller upon approval from Chief Real Estate Officer to make payments to Low Enterprises Real Estate Group from Phase 1 budget.
Supervisor Spitzer?
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, do you just want to explain exactly what this is, your request, please? Because it came in as a supplemental, so I think it's important to explain why you are making these recommendations, please.
Sure. Good morning, Chairwoman Steele, members of the board, Scott Mayor, County Executive Office. This is a supplemental matter that was brought after it was discovered that pursuant to your board's approval of the development agreement with Lowe in January of 2014, which only authorized payment to Lowe under that agreement for Phase 1 costs through fiscal year 16-17, that although monies are budgeted under Phase 1 for fiscal year 17-18, there wasn't authority for the auditor controller to issue checks.
I see.
So we brought this matter just to clean up that matter.
All right, I appreciate that. The other thing I want my colleagues to know, I informed the CEO and Mr. Mayor that there's now circulating in Irvine an initiative very much like a Greenlight initiative that Newport Beach had, Costa Mesa had. It's almost identical to Costa Mesa's initiative. And it basically, if I have this correct, it says something to the effect of any project that doesn't have its entitlements at the time of the initiation of the collection of signatures. So normally, right, initiatives would be when it passes, but this is going and reaching all the way back to the commencement of the collection of signatures. If you don't have your entitlements prior to the initiation of the collection of signatures, then it requires a vote of the people. Now, Waukee Ray, you all know Waukee, he had a project in Costa Mesa, and he is now being subject to that, and he's now, at my understanding, suing, and I haven't reviewed his moving papers. That whole issue of whether you could go all the way back to the commencement of the collection of signatures versus the time an initiative is actually approved by the people, which is the standard I've always been familiar with. So I would ask County Council to look at that initiative and what, if any, impact it might have on the 100 acres, because this is not, believe me, I do not believe in any way whatsoever that the initiative being circulated is directed at the 100 acres. It's not about the 100 acres. It's about growth in general, because it's an overlay of the entire city of Irvine. So I really want to understand what it all means and the potential impacts, because since this item came up and we continue to expend monies, which is great because we need to move our interests forward, I just want to understand what the play might be with this particular initiative, because there is a very strong sentiment in Irvine, which I represent, of course, and Supervisor Bartlett has Shady Canyon, that there's just too much growth right now in this city, and it's overwhelming the infrastructure. So I don't know how the polling, I haven't seen or heard of any polling, but you know, these initiatives tend to pass, right? It passed in Costa Mesa. I think it passed in Newport Beach. Very difficult because people get frustrated. Once they live there, they don't want anybody else to come, right? That's the way so if County Council could look at that initiative and help us understand this as another piece in this evolution of what we call the 100 acres, I'd appreciate it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Supervisor Bartlett.
I'll move the recommended action.
Okay, and I'll second that, but just want to comment, and Supervisor Spitzer's right. In the Irvine footprint, there's a lot going on, and I want to make sure that we don't delay too long in moving a project forward, because then we'll end up essentially with nothing. There's a lot going on in that immediate area. You've got the Great Park. They're going to bring in, I think, Raging Waters and an amphitheater. And 5 Point just purchased the Broadcom property, which is about 75 acres. They're going to develop that. I don't know if there'll be a net increase or decrease in the traffic count. Irvine Company is putting in about 1,700 apartments on the Sand Canyon area, right by the 5 freeway. So all of that gobbles up traffic count and has an impact to the community at large. And we want to make sure that we get our project basically in the queue, because if we're too far down in the queue, we'll end up with a park. So we want to make sure that we are respectful to the taxpayers of Orange County, and we get that balance where the county gets a good project there. We get some revenue, a revenue stream established for the county with this parcel of our 100 acres, and for the West Alton parcels as well. And we're able to move forward and work with all the stakeholders in the community. So we can have some small delays, but nothing significant, because that could adversely affect the county's projects and our position with regard to revenue stream, et cetera. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's a motion and second, and no objections. It passes. We're going to move on to 55G.
Under Vice Chair Doe, approve agreement with SIVA Foundation, Inc. for services related to 2018 TED Festival on February 16th through the 18th, 2018, Miles Square Park. Direct County Executive Officer to add TED Festival to fiscal year 2017-18 County Events Calendar. Per Government Code Section 26227, find that the event will serve a public purpose and meet the social needs of the population of the county, and staff may solicit donations of funds and services for such events. Authorize Director of OC Parks or designate to pursue marketing, sponsorships, and fundraising partnerships with nonprofit organizations and private sector organizations in support of 2018 TED Festival, and execute related agreements and make related findings.
Supervisor Do, you want to make? Okay, our second.
Move the item.
Supervisor Bartlett.
Yes. I know this came as a last-minute supplemental onto the agenda, and we've been trying to gather enough information on county resources and staffing and marketing, et cetera, and the sheriffs, who's going to be policing and paying for the contract, et cetera. I know this is a great festival in Supervisor Doe's district. I attended a few years ago, and it's a wonderful multi-day festival that is great for the community at large. But I'm wondering if we need some more time, though, to actually work through some of the details, because I'm totally unclear as to the county's hosting, but it's saying there's no financial impact, and I don't have all the numbers and the staffing impacts and so on. So I think I would feel more comfortable. And it doesn't start until I think, the February 2018 timeframe. So we've got some time, a little bit of time, to sort of gather some more additional information before we can, where I would feel comfortable moving forward. Like I said, we gathered as much as we could in the last day or so, but there's still a lot of information that I'm missing with regard to just kind of the logistics for the event.
Supervisor Spitzer.
Yeah, I don't mind waiting. If Supervisor Doe wants to review.
Yeah.
Sounds like that calls for a response. I'll wait.
Thank you.
Yeah.
First of all, it may seem like it's far away, but it's actually between landing sponsors and organizing the festival and putting together the planning committee, publications in order to send out and publicize the event, start to lock up vendors. There's a lot of things that have to happen. And in the past, we have approved how many events? The Senior Expo for You, the La Pata project, and we don't hold up those projects pending a specific outcome or expenditure plan, or because as we know, things are kind of fluid when you plan for something that big. As far as the cost and the security measures in place, those things all affect the final design for the festival. And those things don't come about until usually the last month before the event. And so the information you're asking for is not going to determine or be determinant of the outcome of this event. And so my request is that we move ahead with allowing this to be planned. And we have had events going on in this county for years, and I don't remember ever holding up an event pending the kind of specific outcome of or plans for it or cost in previous years. And I don't know why we would start now. I just think that there is a precedent that we've been following, and we've been doing it as a board, which is what? To try to get as much private, nonprofit collaboration to ease the financial burden on the county. And that's exactly what we're doing here. The approval is simply to approve SIVA to do the marketing for us. The item as far as adding it to the county events calendar, that's not even necessary. It's already on the county event calendar. So this is nothing more than something that we have done in the past. This is the third year we're doing this, not something new. So I would request the support from my colleagues to go ahead and move ahead with this item.
Supervisor Spitzer.
So in 2015, when I was chair, I talked a lot about increasing the prominence and the exposure of the county. And I still feel very strongly about that. I came to your event, what was it, 2 weeks ago now, 2 weekends ago? And it was superb. And one of the first people you acknowledged at that event, of course, is it Siava? Is that how you say it? Siva? Siva. But your staff, I mean, I was very impressed. I mean, it was beautiful. I think it was well done. I didn't stay for the whole 3 days. I was there for the event that you had for the elected officials. But I had the drowning prevention booth there, and my staff was there throughout the 3 days, and I appreciate you allowing that to happen. There's obviously a lot of evolution about how this TET event has happened throughout the years. We've all read about it, the relationships with nonprofits, and whether vendors in the past, not you, not the county, but other people will run it. So I'm very, very supportive of moving forward. Supervisor Bartlett's point is well taken. I just want to dwell on it. I don't want you to feel defensive about it, but I think it's important when we write our ASRs, especially when they're supplemental, and we put, I think it's the boxes checked NA for the financial impact. This morning we did get an email from Stacy Blackwood at the request of a staff member in a different district, kind of outlined what the costs were for the Freedom Festival. I didn't request it, but I think it doesn't matter. I think it's very, very useful information. And it outlines some pretty significant potential costs. I mean, receipts are still coming in, and I get it's still evolving. But it lays out numbers that, honestly, I'll confess, I had no idea. And they're big, big numbers. Now, these numbers in this email, on its face, aren't necessarily like, doesn't shock the conscience. I mean, you put on a 3-day event, there's going to be expenditures. One of the things I think, and I think Chris Norby talked a lot about this when he was a supervisor, it was the perceived or actual inequity between the allocation of resources in parks between districts. Like my district is a park-rich district. It eats up a lot of resources, right? Irvine Regional Park, Mason Park. Supervisor Bartlett has a lot of limestone whiting, O'Neill Regional Park, Casper's, just, right, there's just a lot of resources that go into those more open space districts as opposed to your more urbanized district. I think it would be super helpful for this discussion now in the future if we had, Mr. Kim, if we had a breakdown by district of how resources through parks are allocated. Because I think Norby kept hammering that over and over. My constituents deserve stuff too. And I think your constituents, your district puts on events and you have all this stuff and it's amazing, right? I mean, the draw and the people, they get excited about it and I want to continue to support it. But I was thinking this through after I saw this email and I just want to make a suggestion. I'm willing to support it today, but there's a few contingencies I'd just like you to think about. And it's not about this, it's about going forward. So whenever you have a bill in the legislature and it has any kind of fiscal impact, it always goes to appropriations. And then it goes in what we call a suspense file. And it's held in suspense if it has any fiscal impact until the Department of Finance can basically put a number on it, can score it. And then it's allowed to come off the suspense file once the legislators know what the fiscal impact will be. And I think there's a rule that if it's under $100,000, it doesn't go to suspense. But if it's, what is that? We just heard from the 6th supervisor. What did you say, Leah? What's 28.8? Rule 28.8? What's it say?
That allows items that don't have a fiscal impact on the state to be directly to the floor.
Okay, directly to the floor. So, but anything over 100,000 gets considered by the body after Department of Finance scores it. We have the same process with the Legislative Analyst's Office. You cannot do an initiative, because I've done 2 now, Prop 69 at Marcy's Law, until you get it scored by the Legislative Analyst's Office and Department of Finance. I would just suggest this: move forward so you can start to, put all the stuff together and we don't impede you. But I would just suggest, and I think it's a good public policy practice, that before we can agendize any item as a supervisor, whether it's LaPata, because Supervisor Bartlett knows I had my issues about LaPata, okay? No secret. And they were working real fast. Her staff was working so hard to pull off LaPata, and you do the best you can and stuff happens, right? You're really trying, everybody's operating in good faith. They want good things to happen, but little things happen here and there. It's just par for the course. It's not intentional, it's accidental, but it's with the best of intentions. So I would suggest that in the future, and for this item too, that before we can agendize an item, the CEO's got to weigh in on the fiscal impact so that we know what we're looking at. I mean, it's not fair because we're colleagues and we're only 5 of us, and no one wants to say no to another supervisor. But I'm willing to put myself through the same test, which is before I would put something on the agenda, I have to submit it to CEO. Now, I asked Mr. Kim this question: how quickly, if you were to get, say, theoretically, an item like Supervisor's Doe's, how long would it take your staff to do some kind of preliminary analysis, thumbnail, kind of give us an idea of what the potential cost would be? Because Stacy sent out this email, I don't know, went out last night, I guess. I saw it for the first time this morning. But at some point, and I don't even know if this is all accurate, because $85,000 for permits. See, I didn't know that we were covering the expenses for Fountain Valley, ABC, Alcohol Beverage Control Board, Public Works, and the Healthcare Agency for permits. They budgeted $85,000, but, maybe Fountain Valley only needed $5,000. We don't know the answer to that, and they haven't got all the receipts. So, but I think it's very helpful for us to understand what the impact is. So I would suggest that, Mr. Kim, where would we amend that? Where would you add, or Mr. Page, where would we add that any board member item before it could be agendized would need to have an accompanied fiscal analysis? How would you, which is a best practice anyway, where would you do that?
Thank you, Supervisor Spitzer. My recommendation would be that if an amendment is to be pursued, it would be an amendment to the board's rules of procedure, because currently there is a requirement for department items to have CEO concurrence before they come to your board. But at the same time, I'd really want the board members to think about this, that you'd be giving up your prerogative to add items to the agenda based on the agreement of the CEO.
No, you wouldn't. No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you can agendize something. You don't need his concurrence. You just need to have an addendum of the fiscal impact. I don't need his permission.
It would be a timing issue, because today the board members may put agenda items on according to their timeline. But if it required a CEO review and my input on financial estimates, that could take anywhere from a day, if it was relatively minor, to over a week if it was very complex. So that potentially does bind the board members in terms of timing of when you can add items as a supplement.
I get that, but we have to shoulder some responsibility on ourselves too. Okay? We don't get to abdicate our fiscal oversight or our responsibility. We should have to plan if it becomes a policy. Then we plan that into our own activities. Like we go, hey, I need to get this done earlier because the CEO is going to have to do a fiscal analysis. Look, the legislature requires it. Initiatives require it. It's not an unprecedented practice. I'm willing to support this moving forward. The only thing I'd ask you, Supervisor Doe, is that at the next board meeting, like Mr. Kim's staff does that analysis, and that it just gets put back on the agenda next time. I mean, I'll approve it today, no problem. But I do think it's a good practice that you bring to your colleagues what the potential impacts could be. And then we all will abide by that in the future. So I'm willing to vote for it, but I would just ask you to come back, and so we have some understanding of what the impacts might be.
Supervisor Bartlett.
Okay, and I'm in agreement too. I mean, I'm really supportive of this great event, but I think before anything comes to us on the agenda, we do need to have the financial impacts. I know when we do workups for whether it's LaPata or Senior Summit, I mean, we're always working through the numbers. And for staff, it's really important to have that analysis done, both fiscal analysis and also from a resource perspective, because as the five of us are all planning events throughout the county, we want to make sure that staff is well aware of what resources are going to be allocated for certain events, because we could run short. And so, if the first two supervisors get in their request and it gobbles up all the resources for that 2 or 3 day period, then there's nothing left for the rest of the supervisors for their districts. So we want to make sure we get a proper financial analysis so we know those financial impacts. And I think the Freedom Festival was about $400,000. But we want to take a look at what all the fees are, who's waiving fees, what all the costs are, and to have that proper analysis done. And I think it's something that should be done for all the events and activities that we have throughout the district. It's just proper and good business practice. It's a good business model that we should all follow. So that way we know where the resources are going to be allocated for the given time. We've got adequate resources. We know who's going to be working overtime, who's not, because that has to go into the equation. So if we were to even get information for the analysis for last year's festival, that would be great. At least that would give us a template to sort of work from, because obviously when you have a major event like LaPata, we had the before and then we had the after, because we had to know what came in sponsorship dollars, where all the expenses are, and you've got to do your checks and balances and proper allocations for things.
Supervisor Doe.
I find it's really surprising.
Do you want to wait until CEO responds?
Oh, did you have a response?
Yes.
Well, go ahead.
I just simply wanted to inform the board that every year we do adopt the master calendar of events. Many of them include requests from individual board members to incorporate into the planning for the hundreds of events that we run through OC Parks. And when we bring those to the board, each one of those individual programs does not have a fiscal analysis. We don't do that today. So we could do that in the future. But however, it is a massive lift administratively for my staff to chart out 100 plus, I'm sure several hundred events that we do, anything from a fruit bat watching exhibit to running particular district events. Not sure what that is.
It's Amber Alert.
Oh, it's an Amber Alert on the phone, excuse me. But so I just simply wanted the board to be aware that we have not done that as a precedent during the budgeting process.
Okay, Supervisor Doe.
You raise a good point, Supervisor Spitzer, about equity and allocation of OC Park funds between the districts. And I think when you use that metric, you're going to see how inequitable it has been for the 1st and the 4th district. We don't have anything. All we have is 1/3 of Mount Square Park. We leased out the rest to the city and golf operators at this point. And so there's not a whole lot that OC Parks can do in my district other than to plan events. And the reason that it costs so much is this. When you have a park in a very urbanized area, which touches on 3, if not 4 cities. Well, it touches 3 cities, but potentially impacting the 4th city as well, right? Santa Ana, Fountain Valley, Westminster, and Garden Grove. And so when you add to that the participation from the different cities and their demands of traffic mitigation, so-called security, and of course, all their demands are based on projected attendance, which we have no way of proving or disproving. And so what you see is a ton of law enforcement, security, in addition to private security, law enforcement presence as well. And then you have 2 miles worth of fencing on 2 sides of the park where that corner, where the festival was. When you have to factor all that in every time you do an event, that's why the cost is high, okay? But let's go through the process here because it's very important. Because when we talk about the cost of an event over the course of 3 days, and you compare it to, let's say, a La Pata event, right? The total cost is $192,000 for how many hours? And we're talking about a 3-day event with thousands of people coming. And in the past, for the senior summit, we have an ASR, no cost, fiscal impact analysis, and the request was to pre-approval for 3 years of that event. So on the one hand, if it's going to be good for the goose, it's going to be good for the gander. That's how my request would be. Hey, if we're going to start over and do it, then that's fine. But let's just not pick and choose, right? And so at this point, if we want to do a broad overall analysis on all of our events and require a fiscal impact going forward, I'm all for it. Okay? But let's be consistent. Let's not, because I feel like I'm kind of got duped, right? I voted to approve 3 years worth of events, and then now all of a sudden, oh, no, on mine, it has to have some kind of fiscal impact analysis.
Okay, Supervisor Bartlett.
Okay, we do. So in our office, and maybe it's just policy, every board office is different, but we actually do a bit of an analysis because we need to find out how much staff time is going to be required and who's going to be attending and getting the sponsors and making sure that we've got enough to cover the event costs. The Senior Summit's a relatively small one-day event. It's only 4 hours. But I think where we need to maybe have some distinction at the county is events that are considered significant, because some of the smaller events, like a 4-hour event, it's not a big deal in any of our districts, but for a multi-day event, that has potentially some significant impact on county resources, et cetera. So, and I know a lot of advanced planning needs to be done, but also the elements of cost and revenue for the event are dramatically different for a multi-day event versus just a single-day event for a couple of hours. So we want to make sure that we've got proper allocation of resources, and we need to know, what the overtime is going to be, just so we have an idea, and we've got that analysis done, and staff is comfortable that we've got enough park staff for those days. We're not going to run short for the other events that are around the district. So I think from a planning perspective, for resources in particular, it's really helpful so that we don't run short of resources, or if we need to order more resources from somewhere, we're able to do that and plan well in advance.
Supervisor Stoll, you want to go?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I don't remember ever getting any analysis beforehand on any event. La Pata, when I saw the total, it hit me hard for a, 3-4 hour event? Come on, let's put things in perspective here.
Supervisor Spitzer.
Yeah, this is what I don't want to. This is exactly what I don't want to see happen. Okay.
Well, you brought it up.
No. I brought it up, and I'm actually, if you notice, I actually listen to what you all have to say, and I do change my mind up here, like on the legislative platform or whatever. And your arguments are influencing me. I mean, otherwise, why do we have discussion up here, really? I don't even, if I'm just going to come here as an automaton and vote, I don't need to hear from you. Your arguments are compelling. I think going forward, we shouldn't hold this up. I get your point. It's well taken. But I think in the future, and Mr. Kim, let me distinguish between, the stuff that's the bat, what'd you say, a bat thing at Casper's, like a bat tour at night or something? We're not talking about stuff like that. We're talking about the full deployment. A full deployment of resources for a major activity. You know it when you see it, okay? I don't need to describe it. I don't even think, you know it when you see it. It's not complicated. If we start getting into my district is justified versus your district, or my event is more meaningful than yours, or mine is this many hours, we do not want to go there as a board. That's not healthy for us as colleagues, and it's not good. We all have a right to try to put on an event in our district which we think is meaningful for the community and answers the community needs. I would respectfully say you all know that better than any one of us because you represent that district. And that festival was tasteful, super well done, the one we just had, the festival, and I thought it was great, and I want to continue to support it. So I'll vote for that today, move on, but I would just say two things. Let's get, not an equity study, I don't want to call it equity study, but let's get the finances by district of the allocation of resources, because it makes your argument actually for you, which I believe you're right. Your district does not get the same amount of resources per capita than mine does because you don't have the kind of open space I do. I get it. But then so let's have that intelligent academic discussion, but let's also understand that we have to maintain those parks, right? We have a terrible disease in our oaks right now, in our trees. We're cutting down trees right and left. That's adding to our budget. We just have a new revenue source because of the bankruptcy debt that's no longer needed to pay off bankruptcy debt, and it's going back to parks. And so let's have a good, healthy discussion. How about if we just leave it like this? Mr. Kim, Mr. Page, once you look at what you could do with respect to proposals and how quickly you could turn it around, reasonable, right? And that if the supervisor wants to come to the board without that, they can. But at some point, within this is called reasonable period of time, they would produce that as part of a document in conjunction with your staff. So that we're just using reasonableness. At some point, we all have a right to know kind of what the cost would be. And then I would suggest the following too. There should be an after action, not come back to the board, but just filed, right? For example, this memo we got on the Freedom Festival, this cannot be, I think this was just a wide open cast of net. We don't know exactly. And it leaves people potentially with the wrong impression. For example, the $85,000 for permits. I don't know if that's true or not, and I don't think we have that number. But rather than defend it up here, just make sure after we finish that part of it is you need to file, that gets filed, and that everybody kind of knows how the cost came in. And that's just something we put into our history of the event. But let's not lose the forest from the trees here. We should all be encouraging everybody up here, if they're so inclined in their districts, to host significant county events. It's good for our county. It elevates the work we're doing. We have our booths. We're educating people about the services we provide, right? I mean, you saw my staff was out there on the drowning prevention. We're having a huge impact on drowning prevention in this county. Some of you have done the commercials, right? You're talking to your communities. We should all be doing that, reaching out and helping the quality of life in our county. So like you will vote to defer when a supervisor asks for it, I will always vote to support events in your district because I think it's good for the whole county. And the last thing I'll just say is you were gracious enough to invite the whole board. You let the whole board participate. And that's a very nice professional gesture that this is about the county. And so I'll leave it at that.
I think cost estimation is really good. We have motion on the floor, and I'm going to ask Supervisor Doe to say the last word here.
I agree with you on the cost, but let's make sure we're clear that sometimes it's really hard to get at the cost, because I actually spent a night at Casper's. I took my RV down there with my family and actually spent the night. And then in the morning, I took a tour of the Wilderness Center. And then I found out that they actually had to reconstruct some road and clear out some area in order to accommodate some kind of jazz festival or music concert in the park, because it was so successful. And then it was so successful, there was no parking. So now they have to now think about having shuttle services from the parking lots all the way down into the Wilderness Center. And so it can be very tricky when you add up all the costs of prepping an area to accommodate an event and all the ancillary costs that will not reflect in the, then if we're going to do it, we're going to have to be completely honest about it, instead of, because in my district, you won't have to reconstruct the Mount Square Park to get people in, right? All the costs I have will be verifiable. But in your park, and the 3rd and the 5th, you got a lot of wilderness area. That in order to accommodate that area, there's a lot of prep work that has to be done. You know what I mean? That would not need it to be done, would not have needed to be done without that event. And so I'm just trying to put the discussion in a proper context so that we know going in that if that's how it is, then Mr. CEO and OC Parks and Community Resources, I want the full picture, okay? I want, if there's anything that has to be done in order to accommodate an event, that has to be added to the cost, because it can't be this selective process of choosing some costs that are included and some that are not. Because I observed it firsthand. I mean, when you have a concert in the middle of a wilderness area, think about the cost involved in getting that area ready, as opposed to just a plain piece of grass that you just call people to attend. Okay? So I'm supportive of your idea and concept, but I just want to make sure, Mr. CEO, know where I come from with that, because that's something that we need to really fully flesh out.
Okay, Mr. CEO.
So I just wanted to clarify, would it be possible then for us to, for those items that are already approved with budget, I think my staff already leading up to the budget development process have incorporated those. So we wouldn't go back and rehash those. But if it was the board's direction then for new unplanned items that come before the board throughout the fiscal year, that those have some additional input or analysis, and we follow up with the board via memo following board action, that is something that we can absolutely accommodate.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion by Supervisor, the Vice Chair Doe, and seconded by me, and no objections, it passes. Let's move on to supplementary item 55H.
Under Chairwoman Steele, Campaign Finance and Ethics Commission, appoint Josh G. Irvine to the Campaign Finance and Ethics Commission, term of office to be determined.
I move.
Second.
No objections, passes. Okay, before going, 56 has been continued to September 12th, 2017. So before we go to the closed session items, let's go to the board comments and adjournments. CEO? Okay, board comments?
One comment.
Okay, Supervisor Bartlett.
Okay. So item number 50 was, I believe, continued today, and this has to do with PFAC. And I know that we all get updates about PFAC, and it seems that they cancel a lot of meetings because there's lack of quorum, and some of these items that are coming up have some time sensitivity to them, like this item number 50. So could we get maybe the attendance records of the folks attending PFAC, or maybe we need to start getting PFAC members that are going to show up for the meetings, because it's important to have discussion on those items that are on the agenda and not just have those meetings continually be continued on and on and on, where they're affecting the effectiveness of the overall group there. So that would be helpful. Thank you.
I think other commissions are the same thing too. If they cannot really run because of absent, I think we should get reports so we know that we are appointed persons always showing up to the commission meetings or board meetings. That really helps us. Thank you.
Right, and in particular, there was a training that took place on Thursday, August the 10th, and it was a PFAC scheduled meeting, but it was a specific training session. So I'd like to find out how many PFAC members were actually available and present at that training session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments? Adjournment? Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I'd like to adjourn today's meeting in the memory of Ross Johnson, a former state senator and assembly member who represented Orange County. He started his career, I didn't even know this until I saw his obituary, as an iron worker before he went into politics. I guess based upon our discussion today, we were engaged in a little iron working up here. He was first elected in 1978, and he represented Orange County for 26 years in the state legislature. First as an assemblyman and later as a state senator. When I was going to run for supervisor in 1996, he was like the godfather at that time, right, of our delegation. So everybody said, hey, you got to go talk to Ross Johnson, because you have to get his permission to run for office in the county, right? Because there was a few people, Tom Fuentes and Ross Johnson. So I went to see Ross Johnson, and he was a senator. His office was in Fullerton, and I was living in Brea and running for supervisor. And he was very cordial, didn't say much, and then after I finished talking why I should be a supervisor, he's like, yeah, no, it's just not your time, right? He told me I didn't have permission. He wasn't going to bless me running for county supervisor. So I ran anyway, and that part's already, history is told. But, there was right? We all know there were certain figures in our county that you had to go kiss the ring, and he was one of them. And he was just very professional, very gentle about it. It wasn't a brutal meeting, and I really respected him for that. He also led the Republican caucus in both the Assembly and the Senate. And then when he was finally termed out in 2004, Governor Schwarzenegger had him head up the FPPC, and he was very controversial as the head of the FPPC. Like, he started to clamp down at the FPPC, which was very surprising to me, but he did. He was a respected leader and fighter for the causes he believed in, but he passed away in Sacramento. He had a home in Irvine from cancer at the age of 77. So it's so fitting as a former member of our Orange County delegation that we adjourn in his memory, and I ask certainly that our prayers go out to his family and all his friends and former constituents from Orange County. So we ask that we adjourn in his memory. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any more adjournments? No? Okay, we're going to go into the closed session. Madam Clerk, do we have any closed session items? I know we have a bunch.
We have 10.
Okay. Please read the titles.
CS1 under Human Resource Service, Conferences Labor Negotiator, pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. Agency Negotiator Brenda Dieterichs. Employee Organizations, Association of County Law Enforcement Management, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Association of Orange County Deputy Sheriffs, International Brotherhood of Teamsters Local 952, In-Home Supportive Services, International Union of Operating Engineers, Orange County Attorneys Association, Orange County Employees Association, Orange County Managers Association, and other non-represented employees regarding terms and conditions of employment. CS2 under County Executive Office, Conferences Real Property Negotiator, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, property location, former South Court Justice Center, approximately 22 acres at the intersection of Alicia Parkway and Crown Valley Parkway, Laguna Niguel, California. County Negotiator Scott D. Mayer, Chief Real Estate Officer, Negotiating Party, Lab Holdings, LLC, under negotiation, terms and development of value of future lease. Supplemental Closed Session 3 under County Council, Conference with Legal Counsel, Anticipated Litigation, Initiation of Litigation, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, per and D, per and 4, number of cases, 1 case. Supplemental Closed Session 4 under County Council, Conference with Legal Counsel, Existing Litigation, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, per and D, per and 1, name of case, City of San Clemente, etc., versus Foothill Eastern Transportation Corridor Agency, etc., et al. Supplemental closed session 5 under County Council, Conference of Legal Counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, per and D, per and 2. Number of cases, 1 case. Supplemental closed session 6 under County Council, Conference of Legal Counsel, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, per and D, per and 1. Name of case, Paul Lane versus County of Orange. Supplemental closed session 7 under County Council, Conference of Legal Counsel, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, per and D, per and 1. Name of case, Hato Harkins versus County of Orange. Supplemental closed session 8 under County Council, Conference of Legal Counsel, anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, per and D, per and 2. Number of cases, 3 cases. Supplemental closed session 9 under County Council, Conference of Legal Counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, per and D, per and 2. Number of cases, 2 cases. And supplemental closed session 10 under County Council, Conference of Legal Counsel, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, per and D, per and 1. Name of case, Alexa Curtin versus County of Orange, Deputy Caropino.
County Council, do we have reports out?
We may on 3 or 4 items
May.
today, yes.
Okay. The board will now recess to closed session.